Love singing that song with you guys. I want to review here for a little bit. Something that was pressed on me when I was in seminary was the phrase that the key to learning is repetition. What's the key to learning? And the key to learning is, and repetition then is the key to learning. You guys catch on fast. Maybe I don't need to review. I do want to spend some time reviewing. You don't have anything in your notes right now that has to do with this review that's intentional. There were pens set out on the table. If you don't have a pen, you might want it. There's all kinds of studies done, though, that if you hear something and simply hear it, the likelihood of you remembering it is far less. But if you write and you see, or if you hear it and you see it and you write it down, those studies are that you remember it far, far more. If you hear it, see it, write it down, and then go do something about it, well, then you're really on to something. So tonight, I'm actually going to write down some of the things on the screen, Lord willing, if it works, to help us see what it is I've been saying. And there it is, miracles, miracles and miracles. I have a question for us to answer at the very beginning. Last week I was asked this, and I thought it would be good to answer it right here at the beginning. Why are we here? Why are you here? I hope you can read cursive. That's I slip into cursive a lot. Why are we here? Well, we're here to flourish, right? That's what we keep saying. We're here to flourish. When I say we're here to flourish, this has everything to do with Jesus and your walk with the Lord. Cornerstone, I want us to know the sweetest thing in life, and that is fellowship with the Almighty. And that's not something that just happens on a Sunday morning. That's something that we can have with us day in and day out, hour by hour, moment by moment. How I so desperately want us to flourish together. And when I talk about flourishing together, I'm not just talking about a church, our church body. I'm talking about you and your closest relationships, your friendships, if you're married, your marriage. If you've got kids, how I want your family life to flourish. I want your careers, your relationships where you work to flourish. I want your relationships with your neighbors to flourish, and all of that comes from the nutrients of Christ. So we're here to flourish. As I'm going to change this a little bit tonight, just for the sake of what we're saying right now. We're here to flourish together as we follow Jesus. Normally I say cling to Jesus, but let's just call this what it is. This is discipleship. Following Jesus is discipleship. Let's flourish together as we're discipled by Jesus. Have you ever thought about that? If you're a disciple of Jesus, that means you're discipled by Jesus. That's something that's been impressed upon me greatly lately, and that is the nearness of Jesus. He's not far away. We've been studying the 7 churches in a Revelation discipleship group that I'm a part of. And Jesus is constantly telling the churches, I know what you're going through. I know what you've been through. I know what you're doing. I'm here. So yes, Jesus is discipling us. We're here to flourish together as we follow Jesus and discover, if my pen will work, and discover or learn that He is better. Better than what? You tell me, church. He's better than what? Everything. In every way. And again, that's something that you can have a bald-headed, bearded good-looking pastor tell you over and over again. But that's something we discover. That doesn't mean that Jesus makes all our problems go away, or that we're never sad or feeling lonely or depressed. But it does mean that in the middle of all of that, there is something bigger, there is something better for us to experience. So why are we here? Church, we're here to flourish together as we follow Jesus and discover together as we walk down this path of life that Jesus is better than everything in every way. That's why we're here. Let's talk a little bit more about week 1. Week number 1. That first week, I defined for us discipleship. And here I want to give you that one. We went through 4 definitions, but let me give you the one I want sticking in your mind. Discipleship is pursuing a vibrant walk with Jesus. Sorry, you're going to have to deal with my sloppy spelling and or bad spelling and sloppy handwriting. Discipleship is pursuing a vibrant walk with Jesus. That's part 1 of that definition. Part 1 is the intake. Part 1 is the receiving. Part 1 is us living in vibrancy through whatever it takes to make our lives, our spiritual life vibrant. It's discipleship is pursuing this vibrant walk with Jesus. And then part two is helping others to do the same. So we pursue a vibrant walk with Jesus, and we're helping other people pursue a vibrant walk with Jesus. Now, I want to make a clarifying statement here. When I talk about discipleship tonight, I could be talking about, depending on the context of the sentence I'm using in it, I could be talking about you pursuing a vibrant walk with Jesus. Or I could be using in the sense of you helping somebody else pursue a vibrant walk with Jesus. Or third, I could be talking about both. Because ultimately, that's what discipleship is. It's that following after him, and it's helping others to do it, to do the same thing, to follow after him. So just know that. Discipleship is both intake and it's outtake. It's both maturing ourselves and it's multiplying our faith in others. It's both receiving through all sorts of means, whether it's through church or the word or prayer, it's receiving nourishment, and at the same time, it's giving nourishment to others. Remember, the first week, I think we used the phrase, or maybe it was the second week, I don't remember, we flourish and we fertilize. We flourish our faith, our walk, so that we can fertilize the faith of others, all right? The other thing that I want you to remember from week 2 is this. It's the discipleship mindset. What's the key to learning? Thank you. And repetition is what? Have you guys heard this stuff before? I'm hoping that this is going into your heart and that it is going to plant seeds and it's going to begin to grow deep roots and bear much fruit in your life, in your homes, in your workplaces, in this town, all right? So the discipleship mindset, there are several aspects. One, you're a disciple of Jesus, right? I am a disciple of Jesus. Church, don't forget that. You are a disciple. You are a follower of Jesus. He's discipling you. Number 2, I am making disciples of Jesus. I'm making. We asked that second word that first week. We might have asked you, are you doing a good job of it? Maybe, maybe not. But if you are a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, you are a follower of him. And if you're a follower of him, then you are making disciples. And part of this seminar is helping you realize that you're making disciples and to do that with intentionality, with purpose, and maximum effectiveness. So that discipleship mindset includes I'm a disciple of Jesus and I am making disciples of Jesus. Thirdly, God has placed nets of people in my life, right? God, or I should say it like this, God's placed people in the nets of my life. That's what I want to say. God has placed people in the nets of your life. This, of course, comes from Mark chapter 1. Jesus saying, follow me and I will make you become fishers of men. And we looked at that, and we looked at the different nets that God has placed in our lives, whether it be at work or at church or in the neighborhood, in your family. God has placed people in the nets of your life. The question is, what are you doing with them? So, number four, identify those people. This is taking too long. Identify those people. Identify them. 5, classify them. What are the classifications, church? What's the P stand for? The B and T and the H and the hellbound. Let's not forget to say that with a little bit of sorrow. So we've got our Pauls, our Barnabas, our Timothys, and the hellbound. And if we see the people within our nets with those classifications, it's going to help us use our time with them very intentionally. Sixthly, the question is, how can I help them follow Jesus? And can I just put in parentheses here, today? You're not going to be able to see all of those people today. But if we have a mindset of urgency, of this isn't something I'm going to put off till next week or next month or next year, but if we ask ourselves, how can I help this person along today in their faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, or in my evangelism of this person if they do not possess faith, then that is going to help me to have this discipleship mindset. Okay? You're a disciple. You're making disciples. God's put fish in your nets. What are you doing with those fish in your nets? What kind of fish do you have? You got rainbow trout? Those are the hellbound. You got a brown trout? Well, that's a Timothy. If you got a big, beautiful brook trout, that might just be a Barnabas. They're fun to look at. But if you've got a bull trout, those are the Pauls. Those are the big, the meaty, the trout. What kind of fish do you have? And what are you going to do with them? How can you help them follow Jesus today? Okay? So that was week 1. Week 2 is going to go a lot faster. Week 2. It answered the question, the first part of discipleship. So remember, the first part of that discipleship definition is discipleship is pursuing a vibrant walk with Jesus. So week 2 is all about answering the question, how do I flourish? How do I personally flourish in my faith? Practically, how do I pursue a vibrant walk with the Lord? What works for me? Now, that's not some relative question. It's what ingredients, spiritual ingredients, need to be present in my life in order for me to flourish? And remember, I gave you an activity to do. Hopefully you figured this out this last week, but you were to ask and answer the question, what does a full throttle day look like in pursuing Christ? That's the word throttle, in case you're wondering what that word is right there. Full throttle. What does it look like when I am clicking on all cylinders? What kind of gasoline do I need to be pouring into my engine so I can have maximum output in my relationships with others? So that way, when I see somebody and they might say something irritating or I'm tempted to be impatient, rather than responding sinfully, on those full throttle days, you're ready for that, and you can bounce back with patience and the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, self-control, right? Good. So hopefully you know what a full throttle day looks like. And I wanted to tell you this. I should have told you this last week. That's going to look different on a Lord's Day Sunday than it is on a Wednesday, right? Sundays are different than other days. But I don't need to go down and make much more of that. Next, what is a steady Eddie? Remember that? Oh, steady Eddie. What's a steady Eddie day look like? And a steady Eddie day, this is scaled back obviously from a full throttle day, somewhat, but you're still putting some good gas in on the engine of the Holy Spirit, if you will. And those nutrients are enriching you, and you're still spiritually minded, but you know you're not necessarily at peak performance, right? What does a steady Eddie day look for you? And what does a bare bones day look like for you? Bare bones. Listen, we should have camped here a little bit longer. I'll just make a few quick comments. One, this is what minimal spiritual inflows this looks like in my life. Or how did I write it here? This is the minimum spiritual inflows that I am willing to accept for a day. I may be giving during my day more than I'm receiving, spiritually speaking. And so we know that these bare minimum days, that if there's more of those than maybe steady Eddie or full throttle days, that I'm going to run on empty. I might just lose it. What does a bare bones day look like for you? Can you recognize a bare bones day? Can you recognize that if you try to live your spiritual life, you're following after Christ with bare bones day after day, that you will run out of spiritual gas? And then, of course, I didn't talk about this last week, but I'm going to add a fourth: unacceptable days. Can we just call them what we should be calling them? Unacceptable days. On unacceptable days, there's no real effort to feed myself spiritually, to thrive in my relationship with the Lord. In fact, I could be accused of neglecting my walk, my relationship with Jesus. That's what an unacceptable day is. And what I have found, and I don't know if you could probably, listen, we are far too accepting of these types of days rather than making these types of days our standard. So let's shoot, church, to make these our standard. And let's make these the exceptions. I don't know how to spell exceptions. Exceptions. Yes, good, something. All right. Tonight's goal. Let's move. That's your review. All right. We've defined discipleship. We've talked about the discipleship mindset. We've talked about what it takes to flourish. You need to know what it takes to flourish in your walk. That's your following after Jesus in the discipleship, in your discipleship, personal discipleship. Now we need to turn the corner a little bit and talk about what does it look like when we pour into others. And this might surprise you, but let's pull out that sheet, the sheet that I passed out, or that Dave passed out to you. What's it called? Discipleship at Cornerstone. No, the 5 levels of discipleship at Cornerstone, okay? Let's see if I can do this. You're not going to be able to read this, but you'll be able to figure it out if you, how do I do this? Share? No. How do I do this? Hold on just a second. I'm not very smart. Export. That's what I want. Export. PDF. Markup. Can you see all of this? Yeah? All right. All right. This is the 5 levels of discipleship at Cornerstone. So you see the asterisk under there. It says we need to increase our understanding of when and how discipleship takes place in our local church body. All right, everybody look at me. Take a deep breath. I need to take a deep breath. We're switching gears. I want to bring awareness to ways that you are currently being discipled and ways you could potentially be discipled. And I don't want to gloss over this, because when you look at Jesus' ministry, this is how he did things. And this is how it's applied, if you will, how it fleshes itself out in the local church in Billings, Montana in 2021. All right? Now, I want you to see over here on the left side of your paper, if you will, there are 5 levels. Do you see these 5 levels over here of discipleship? Let me introduce them to you. There's the public discipleship that takes place. That's a main category. There's the social discipleship that takes place here. Number 3, there's the personal discipleship that takes place at Cornerstone. There is transparent discipleship, and there is divine discipleship that takes place. Let me explain here. Let's start with the public. The public discipleship that takes place, of course, would be the public setting, corporate worship service when you come here on a Sunday morning. This is a public event. This isn't something that is very personal. It's personal, but it's not. It's usually the communication that you have is maybe not between you and another person, but between you and God. There's a lot of communication coming from this direction of the platform this way. It's public, right? Even the way you're sitting right now. It's not made for intimacy or relationships, but it's a public act of discipleship. The same thing could take place in maybe our adult Bible fellowships, where you have somebody standing in the front of a room teaching to a group of people. So that's one aspect. Next, we have a social aspect of discipleship. This is what takes place before and after a church service. It's what happens before and after a night like tonight. It's what happens at our fellowships, our potlucks, those sorts of things. More about this in just a moment. There's also the personal discipleship. Notice that as this funnel, as we go down in these levels of discipleship, it gets more and more personal, right? This personal aspect here, this has to do with our growth groups, our discipleship groups, our dinner parties, our socials, our Christmas parties that we'll have with each other here in the next month or so. Perhaps our Thanksgiving dinners that we'll have with people from church this week. Next, we have what I would call the transparent level. This is where your transparency is really called on. This is where it's extremely up close and personal with the person that you're sitting across from. This could be one-on-one discipleship, one-on-two, one-on-three. This could be peer discipleship with 2 or 3, even 4 people. This can be couple to couple discipleship. But this is when we really expose who we are, we're vulnerable, and we're looking for the deepest help, encouragement, accountability, right? This is what I would call the transparent level. And then fifthly, we have the divine level. That is your one-on-one time with God, which can happen at any moment, right? Here's what I'm going to suggest to you tonight. As somebody who is a disciple who is both following Jesus and who is helping others to follow Jesus, if you are going to maximize your discipleship, then all 5 levels should be present in your life. Now, I'm not going to come and judgmentally and say, if you're not in one of these things, you're not one of doing it, you're out of God's will. This isn't like that. But if we're going to look at this holistically, I think we could agree that if I'm at church and I'm fellowshipping with others and I'm involved in these personal relationships through discipleship groups or growth groups, but then I'm really getting to the nitty-gritty in my life and my faith, and I'm spending quality time with God, church, that's going to be something that helps you flourish. And so what I'm going to ask you to do as we work through this is I'm going to ask you, is this public aspect in my life? Am I at church enough? The answer is, if you're here, yes. You're here. You're here on a Monday night. You guys are amazing. Am I making the most of the social aspect? Am I taking advantage of the personal aspect of discipleship that's offered here? Am I involved with transparent discipleship? And how's my one-on-one time with God? We're going to expand these more as we go forward here, as we keep working our way through this, okay? Now, what I'd like to do is come over here to this area right here and work through from top to bottom once again like we just did. The public aspect of our discipleship, the key word here that I want you to walk away from with having in your mind is the word engaged. When you show up on a Sunday morning, are you engaged in what's happening? You do realize what's happening, right? You're gathering with God's elect, people he's loved and chosen from before time began, who have saved them, and now we gather together to worship him in spirit and in truth. It is a holy gathering. It is a meeting with God's people, with God himself. When we walk into this room and his word is opened and he tells us, he says grace to you and peace, there is a conversation that we as his body are having with him. His bride is here to meet with him, the bridegroom. This isn't just something we do on Sundays. This is a holy gathering. And so I want to invite you to engage. How do we engage with this type of discipleship on Sunday mornings? One, you walk in prepared. You guys know if you invite me to do something on Saturday evening or afternoon, what's my answer? No. And it's not because I don't love hanging out with you. It's because my Sunday morning literally begins in my mind, in my heart, about Saturday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm gearing up for the biggest meeting of the week. And that's not because I stand here and preach. It's because I'm preparing to engage with God. So as you walk in, engage. Are you prepared? Be worshipful. Be prayerful. Be encouraged as you sit here. Be giving. A lot of it, when I'm talking about giving here, I'm not talking about just giving financial gifts. Sorry about the typo here, too. It should just be 1 comma. Do you come looking to give to others? To minister to them, to give of yourself? We're here to offer spiritual acts of worship, right? So are you giving? You should be instructed while you're here. You should be convicted. You should be comforted. All through this active engagement. So it needs to be present here. I need to keep going faster than this, guys. Are you guys doing okay? All right. Next, let's talk about the social aspect that happens before or after one of these public gatherings. I want to invite you to be intentional. And that is in your conversations, right? In your time with each other. Be intentional by moving from the surface to slightly deeper waters while fishing for opportunities to go deeper at a more appropriate time. What do I mean there? It's so easy for us to come in here and say, isn't it nice that finally people are realizing that Ohio State is probably the best football team, college football team in America? And it's really easy for me to go there. But if I stay there, I've completely wasted an opportunity. Now, you could start with that. We can start on the surface. That's very natural when you start talking with people in a setting like this, to be surfacey. But can I invite you to maybe go just a little bit below the surface? And what I mean by that is, I don't want you to be superficial, but there is an appropriateness in which people aren't expecting you to come up to them and say, so how did you struggle with sin this week? On a Sunday morning. Does that make sense? So there's an appropriate level of maybe going below the surface, but what you can do is you can have your radar on. You can be fishing to see, I'm connecting with this person. Maybe we could connect on a deeper level, maybe in a growth group or even a one-on-one type discipleship type setting, right? So but the whole goal is to make the best use of your time in those social settings when there's not some public event going on around here, if you will. Next, let's talk about personal. This has to do with, again, the growth groups or discipleship group, the Tuesday morning men's group, those sorts of things. The key word here is participate. Not only should you participate in them, or do I invite you to participate in them, but be an active participant while you're there, present, praying, listening well, growing, giving thoughtful answers and following up. It's possible, it's possible in these groups, let me just back up, all right? The invitation is to participate, and not just show up, but to participate actively while you're there. I make this little side note of it's possible to overshare and undershare in these groups. Listen, we do need to realize that as we are involved in these discipleship groups, that there is an appropriate level of opening up and speaking. It's quite possible to go to these groups and never say a word. That would be an example of perhaps maybe undersharing. Or it's possible to go to these groups and just say too much and not give other people opportunities, or perhaps maybe go a little bit deeper than other people are comfortable going at that particular moment. It takes years sometimes for people in these types of settings to grow comfortable enough to go really deep relationally. And so what I'm simply trying to draw out here, I'm not trying to tell you don't go deep with relationships and growth groups. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is we need to recognize that there's limitations sometimes, and that we need to be willing to live with those limitations in the sense of giving those growth groups some grace and some patience and time to develop. But maybe what we're looking for is really this next level of discipleship, this transparent level of discipleship. Right here, our key word is focused. These are focused times of intimate, transparent edification and sanctification grounded upon your personal walk with the Lord. In other words, like we can get together and we can share our thoughts and we can get all touchy-feely and we can cry and we can laugh and we can share stories about our life. But if it is not grounded upon Jesus Christ and what he is doing in us, what he wants to do through us in that transparent relationship, well, it might not be as deep of discipleship as we might think. And so this time, I want to encourage us, and this is what we're going to talk a lot about as time permits tonight. This is where I want us to focus. I think you guys want to focus in on this one-on-one, the smaller, transparent discipleship, but this is what it needs to be. It needs to be a time in which it's very transparent, intimate, edifying, sanctifying, and build upon or ground upon your personal walk with the Lord. More on that in a little bit. Key word for the next thing here is for the divine aspect. Level 5 is intimacy. Intimacy. This is your daily, intimate relationship with God, especially your time in his word, prayer, and personal family worship and meditation. This is when Jesus disciples you. This is when you have your meeting with him. And this could be a meeting that goes on throughout your day. You know how it is. I can't get honed in here too much. Okay, you guys doing okay? Don't lose me. Don't lose me. Let's keep going. Let's see. Let me try to erase all this stuff. Oh. All right. We can go really fast through this next couple. Public. Let's go back up to the public. Up here where it says group size. The Lord disciples you in these public times. He disciples you through the means of grace. That's the preaching of God's word. It's the ordinances, through instruction, through worship. So God's discipling you through that. Socially, the next social size, these are those shorter, unplanned opportunities before or after the service or things to make an impact or be impacted. Ask intentional questions, inviting the person to go slightly deeper than the surface. Personal, these groups ought to be centered around God's word. They sharpen us, offer some accountability, and provide us opportunities to meet the needs and share burdens, one another's burdens. In the transparent spirit, this is the spiritual equivalent to personal training. This is designed to push us and encourage us in your relationship with the Lord. Let me ask you a question. Does anybody ever, when you hear about like one-on-one discipleship, if you've never been a part of it, is that slightly intimidating to you? For some it is. I don't think is Caleb Schreibeis here? He's not here. So I can pick on Caleb. All right. Caleb, if you guys don't know who Caleb is a beast of a man. He's strong as an ox. He played football for MSU, and he was really, really good at it. Well, a couple of months ago, he invited me to come over and start working out with him. I'm like, okay. And you go, and it's like personal training, right? You're trying to get fit. You're trying to get stronger. You're out there, and you're huffing and you're puffing. And, it's very intimate in a sense because it's just you and him and this other guy named Rick, Pastor Rick. And I'm out there, and we're doing all these exercises. My belly's just flopping around. He's trying to talk to me. I can't breathe, let alone talk. Sweat's just burning in my eyes, right? We're doing these exercises, and he's just like, hey, guys, how's it going? It was very uncomfortable, but oh, so healthy, right? I mean, you're sweating, you're stinking, you're jiggling. All the things you don't want the people in the church to see you do. And there he was, just next to me, helping me, pushing me, making me better. One-on-one discipleship can be kind of like that. It's somebody that's a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit farther down that road, helping you while you're being vulnerable, while your weaknesses are on full display, when your ignorance is apparent, but you're there to get better. It's awesome. It's totally awesome. So this is this transparent one-on-one, one-on-two, three people, whatever, to couple discipleship. Next, let's talk about the divine. What's the group size here? Well, it's you and God. You are a disciple of Jesus. That means Jesus is that should say discipling, not discipline you. That means Jesus is discipling you. He promises that he is with you always, never leaving your side, never forsaking your needs. So that's that personal flourishing. All right, so here are some key questions I do want to hit. Let's go up to the top. Level 1, when it comes to level 1 discipleship, are you prepared each Sunday as you enter into worship? How are you engaged, convicted, and comforted? Are you engaged? Are you giving of your time, talent, and treasure? So ask yourself some of those questions. Go back to these questions later. Level 2, the social aspect. Are you being intentional with your social times at church? Are you wasting your conversations? Are you helping people follow Jesus with your words? Level 3, the personal level. Are you participating well in a small group through your prayers, thoughtful answers, and meeting needs? Do you let others share your burdens? Do you share their burdens? Level 4, key question. This is that transparent discipleship. What's keeping you from this kind of discipleship? Whose faith do you want to emulate and model your faith after? Will you prayerfully ask that person to disciple you? And then level 5, the divine level. Key question. What does a full throttle day look like for you? A steady Eddie, a bare bones day. Don't settle for less. Okay, you guys see the big picture? This is what we want for you guys. This is how we want you to grow. Let's do this now. I want to move on and start talking more about this level, because you obviously come to church, you're social, you can decide how you're doing there and grow. I don't know if all of you are in growth groups or not, but those opportunities are certainly there. Let's talk about this, because this seems to be the place where we need to grow the most. But in order for me to do that, I need to pick up another. Give me just a minute to transition. Let's delete this. Let's talk about these discipleship meetings, okay? I don't know if you've read this. You probably read it when you came in. Don't let this intimidate you too much, okay? One of the big things about one-on-one discipleship is, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about? What am I going to do week after week? And so what I did is I brainstormed what I like to do when I get together with people for intentional discipleship. And I shared this with some other very experienced disciple makers, and they helped me build this tool that I want to give you tonight. What I want to mention is, as we work through this is the footnote. This document, it's intended, I should say, to be a helpful guide for an ongoing personal discipleship relationship. It's not intended to be followed rigorously. In other words, don't show up, order a cup of coffee, and pull this sheet out and work through it, right? Rather, going back to the footnote, it should be used as a guide. Feel free to add or subtract from these suggestions in order to accommodate your particular discipleship relationship. Please note, however, that is important. This is important to note. Please note, however, that it is important to clearly state your expectations, whether you are a discipler or the disciplee. In other words, if you sit down with somebody that sat through this seminar and you're going to start a discipleship relationship and you only ask one of these questions every week, they might be wondering, I feel, if they're getting shortchanged, right? So the expectation should be there, or should be clearly expressed so people know what to expect. What could a discipleship meeting look like, potentially? Let me back up again. Can we ask and answer the question, who? Who should disciple you? Or who should you disciple? I will tell you that discipleship relationships, if they're not well paired, can be awkward. And that can be frustrating. So it is important that you would immerse a question like this in prayer. I do think that if you're looking to grow in your relationship with the Lord, to be more of a Timothy, if you will, that it's important that you look for somebody whose faith and life you'd like to emulate. If you're a Paul and you're thinking about asking to disciple somebody, I think it's really important that you think about who you ask. Are they as committed to discipleship as you are? You guys have heard it's a horrible acronym, but the acronym FAT. Are they fat? Are the F meaning faithful? Will they show up? The A being faithful, available. Do they have the time to do this? T, are they teachable? Are they teachable? So you really do want to look for fat disciples. People who are faithful, people who are available, people who are teachable. Parents, if you have kids that are in your home, the answer to this question is a parent. You should be discipling your children. What if you have a lot of children? Divide and conquer. That's what my wife and I do, right? Divide and conquer. But who? I don't want to get everybody out, but parents, you should at least have them in your net of transparent discipleship. Question is often asked of when? Who has time for this? Who has time for this? And the elders and staff, the pastoral staff, we've been asking this question, like, how can we make it possible for people to pursue these types of transparent discipleship relationships? And let me tell you what we're going to encourage you to do. We're going to encourage you to be in these discipleship relationships on Sunday mornings. We'd invite you to come to a service and be involved in a transparent discipleship relationship during the other service. It's the Lord's Day. We've talked with our children's ministry director. Where's Lindsay? You're not allowed to quit after tonight, but remember, we talked about this. Remember. Lindsay's going to disciple all of you guys. No, just kidding. We've talked about how it's okay if you have children, bring them and get them going in the children's ministry and go travel to Mazevo. What's the other one's called? Mazevo? The Holiday? I think Wendy's is serving breakfast. Subway serving breakfast. There are so many opportunities within a mile or two of church. Go sit down for an hour. Put your kids in children's ministry. Go off campus. Meet for an hour. Come back. Pick up your kids and come to the service. We are serious about wanting you guys to be able to have these transparent discipleship relationships. And that's, your kids can go off and be ministered to these other godly people in the church, and by other kids their age, while you go off and have some transparent discipleship. So we want to provide you with that option. Does that mean we're going to be done with ABF? No, but there were only 10 of you in there on Sunday, which means about 100 of you could be going off and doing this. So we'd love for you to take advantage of that. So the who, you can pray about that. The when, hey, we can take care of that. The what, that's what we're going to get into right now. The what. Well, open with prayer. You always want to open with prayer. 2, take time to discuss what you read this week in your personal time with God. This is why you need to be full throttle or steady Eddie, right? There's built-in accountability here. You can ask the question, how has God been encouraging you through your time with him and his word? How has he been equipping you with truth? How has he been convicting you of sin, both sins of omission and commission? How's he correcting you of error? What do I mean by error? I mean, like, have you been believing bad thoughts or wrong thoughts or slightly off thoughts of God? I'll tell you, once again, the study that I'm doing with these men on going through the book of Revelation has been phenomenal. And one of the reasons is it's teaching me the imminency, the nearness of Jesus. He's here with us. We're his people. He's teaching you. He's discipling you through gifts that he's given to a guy like me. It's incredible. So anyhow, he's been correcting me of some error of just thinking, oh, he's far away, oh, he's busy, or, I know those things aren't true, but those are errors that have just kind of slipped into my thinking. So how has God, through your time in his word, been correcting you of error, leading you to change? Listen, I can't read my Bible in the morning, it seems like, and not be encouraged by God to love my wife better, to love my kids better, to love the people that I work with better, and to love this church better. It's wild. How is he leading you to change? And you could talk very specifically about that. Number 6, assuring you. How has God been assuring you of his love and acceptance through your time with him and his word this week? And notice this phrase, this week. That's why these weekly discipleship ministries are so good. It's built-in accountability. You know you're going to sit down and somebody's going to sit across from you and ask you, how has your time in the Word been? And it's not just some checkbox of, did I read my 10 chapters today? It's how did God minister to me in these intimate moments with him? Letter B, did you learn anything new about him or about yourself as you meditated on God's word? Letter C, take time to read and share the passages that minister to you the most throughout the week. Number 3 here. Next, what passages from this past week's reading did you memorize and spend time meditating on in your heart and mind? I mean, if you guys are choosing to memorize a verse a week, you can sit there and talk about it, how the Lord used it. Number 4, how was your prayer life this week? Was it consistent? Was it worshipful? Are you confessing sin regularly and specifically? Are you expressing gratitude for your salvation and the many gifts in your life that flow from it? Are you praying faithfully for yourself, your family, your church, your neighbors, missions, the persecuted, the lost, the government, those serving away from home? Let's not forget Jake Pancho, right? As he serves in our military overseas, even right now. Number 5, how was your week? Were there any big events, encouraging times, discouraging times, arguments, fights? Oh, that's the one I want to ask. Were there any health issues? Were there personal wins, personal losses, highs and lows, right? So see what we did here? We moved from the most important relationship in your life, and that's with God, your intimacy with God, time in the Word and prayer, to now we're asking, how was your week? What went on in your life? And then look at letter B under number 5. How does God's Word and what you read this week speak to the things you've gone through? Do you see how this is just a mingling? This is what of the spiritual and what's going on in your life. Number 6, are there any sins that you would like to confess? Is there any area of your life where you need accountability in prayer? What specific action plan do you need to make in order to help you in repentance? Number 7, are your daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and one-year goals on target? Wait, that's a lot of goals. I know, it's great. If not, what are the issues that are keeping you from hitting your goals, and how can you solve those issues? Are there people you should encourage, forgive, confront, accept, evangelize, or be especially loving to this week? If there are any other spiritual disciplines, either of you are practicing, you can discuss them now and how they've helped edify you this past week. Or, this is funny, if you are doing a book study, now is the time to discuss it. Now that you've spent 3 hours talking about your life in the Word, you can get into your study. That's not the point. The point is, if you have some good introductory back and forth about your walk with the Lord, your week, then it's appropriate then to get into a book study. What's a book study? Well, if you're going to read through some sort of Christian book and talk about it, now's the time to do it. But you can see how this list prioritizes the Word and prayer, your relationship with God. Number 10, this is how you could finish a meeting, simply by asking the question, what do we need to pray about? What do we need to pray about? Okay, 7:40. You guys doing okay? Let me just hit a couple of highlights. Some of you, I should say, have seen the next sheet. Go ahead and look at that next handout. And I apologize right now for the grammar error on the cover. That is my fault. I apologize for that. Men's should have an apostrophe. What's that? Did somebody say it was okay? Okay, that's okay. Oh, thank you. I agree. It's okay. Export PDF. Markup. All right, listen, if you're thinking about jumping into one-on-one discipleship, this is a document that actually my wife created a few years ago. Rick has come alongside of and shaped it. I've put a little bit of my own time into this as well. But you have these guidelines for the one-on-one discipler. If you're going to be kind of the Paul or the leader of the group, there are some really great suggestions here for this guidelines for the one-to-one discipler. I'll leave you to read those on your own. What does discipleship look like? Again, I'll leave you to read this on your own. These are great, and that's why they're given to you as a tool. I want to park on number 14. Do you see number 14? It says there to get help. As you disciple, don't be afraid to ask for help. It says if he or she has a question or a problem that seems beyond your capabilities, get help from a pastor. Let's just stop right there. We are so committed to discipleship and helping you flourish in these transparent discipleship relationships that we are changing Pastor Rick's job. His title is now going to be pastor of do whatever Jeff wants him to do and, which it's always been, you're right, we're keeping that part of it. Pastor of pastoral care and discipleship. So Pastor Rick will be here for you as a resource. As a matter of fact, we are working very hard behind the scenes, Pastor Rick, myself, and now Steve, to bring you an incredible, it's not done yet, resource on discipleship that can take you from discipling or being a brand new believer to ultimately, if you wanted to being the leader of a ministry or an elder or a pastor or, it takes you from point A to point Z. So we're here and we're very committed to it, this discipleship, and we just want to articulate that to you. Great. Let's go down. Pastor Rick has worked really hard on this, as has my wife. This recommended reading list, this has grown exponentially. It's probably doubled since maybe the last time you've seen this. If you'd like to read a book with somebody in your one-on-one discipleship or 1-on-3, whatever it is, there is a recommended reading list categorized by Christian living, church history, discipleship, evangelism, missions, and apologetics, men and women, meaning marriage and parenting, family and home. I guess it includes all of that. Prayer, suffering, theology, and resources if you're going to disciple a new believer. There's devotionals you could read together. There's books of the Bible. There's the book. If you want to study a book of the Bible using a book help, there are some suggestions for you as well. Okay, do you see those resources? You know what they're there for? We want you to read all those by next Sunday. Yeah, those are there if you're wondering if there's a good book out there. There are some good books out there that you could discuss. We talked about setting goals, right? You can read this sheet, but basically, Howard Hendricks always used to say, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. But if you have specific goals that you're targeting, then it can really help you in your walk with the Lord. So you can read about goal setting right there, and you can make your daily, weekly, 30-day, quarterly, and annual goals. There's a sheet here called Spiritual House Cleaning. This is a great tool that has been used for years. Again, it can just be a part of your weekly discipleship. Is there somebody this week I need to show love to? Someone I need to forgive? Someone I need to ask forgiveness from? Someone to confront? Someone to encourage? Yada, yada, yada. You can read that, okay? And then there's the wheel evaluation. Yes, it's wheelie there. So, at any rate, we just wanted to give you some tools there. Why? Why do we do all this? Because we want to flourish. We want to give you tools to flourish. You might be sitting there thinking, oh, this is so overwhelming. Yeah, well, maybe, but maybe not. I mean, drop a net. Maybe that net is just sleep. Spend some quality time with the Lord. Flourish. Make that commitment, right? Come to church on Sundays. Engage. Get the absolute most out of that meeting between God and his bride. Before and after the service, be intentional. As you fellowship, as you talk. Either before you come to church service or after you leave church service, find somebody to disciple or who will disciple you. And then all you need to do, if you got any time left, is join a growth group, a discipleship group. So we're talking about your time with God during the week. You pick that time. We're talking about Lord's Day, Sunday morning. You can come and fellowship. You can participate in public worship. And you can also participate in transparent discipleship. And then you've got the rest of your Sunday through the rest of your week to figure out a time whether or not you can afford to go to a growth group where you can get on that personal level with people. It's doable. It's doable. And it's not because we want you to buy into a program. It's because we want you to flourish. And I'm going to tell you, you'll flourish. I mean, as you read through these documents, could you imagine if I could call you up next year and you could be a personal example of, man, Jeff went through all this stuff and I thought, there's no way I could do it. And after a year of doing it, my life, though it might still be hard, the trials are still there, I still have to go to work, the bills still need to be paid, but spiritually speaking, I've never flourished like I have. Would you just take a moment and imagine what it would be like if you invested in Jesus this much? If you sought first his kingdom, if you stored up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Can you see it? I want to invite you to be a part of that.